Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another live lesson with Taco. Today we're going math. We're talking about adding and subtracting mixed numbers. Just as a reminder, a mixed number, when we say mixed number in fractions, we're talking about a whole number plus a fraction. Okay, so 1 and a half, 3 and 3/4, 4 and 7/8, 2 million and 1/10, right? All of those are mixed numbers. So they've got a whole number plus a fraction. If we look at that on a number line, right? It's going to be in the middle of our whole numbers, okay? We don't just jump from whole number to whole number to whole number. There's an infinite number of values in between each of our whole numbers. Those are our mixed numbers. 1.5, it's going to be greater than 1 because it's 1 plus a fraction, but less than 2. It's going to be right here, right? 3 and 3/4, it's going to be greater than 3, less than 4, 3/4 of the way there. 4 and 7/8 can be greater than 4, less than 5, and 7/8 is almost 8/8, so it's really close to 5. And then 2 million and 1/10 is going to be way over there somewhere, just past 2 million. Okay. Just like with whole numbers, fractions are a value. You can add them and subtract them. And just like with our place value, with whole numbers, fractions can be added and subtracted in a similar way. Okay. So today we're going to be dealing with fractions that have the same denominator. So we won't be adding these two fractions together today. We're going to only focus on those that have like denominators, just to get the flow of how to add and subtract mixed numbers. Okay. Next year in 5th grade, we'll start to talk about what do we do when our denominators aren't the same. We've got to make them the same. So there's an extra step. So just for today, same denominators. Okay. If we have something like 1 and 1/4 plus 1 and 1/4, right? We could think about it on a number line. We could say, 1 1/4 is about there, right? We can make a jump of 1, and we can make a jump of 1/4. And where do we end up, right? The other thing we can do is, just like you add your ones and ones together, you add your tens and tens together, you add your hundreds and hundreds together when you're adding a larger whole number, you do the same thing with fractions. So thinking about 1/4 plus 1/4, right? Just as simple as 1 plus 1 is 2. And then remember, when we add and subtract fractions with like denominators, our denominator stays the same. We're not changing the size of the piece. All we're doing is we're figuring out how many of those pieces, how many fourths do we have? We have 2/4. And then 1 plus 1 is 2. So we end up with 2 and 2/4. Now, you can simplify this fraction down to 1/2. 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. I'm not super worried about that today. Okay. All I want you to get out of this lesson is, can we add and subtract mixed numbers accurately? Okay. We'll get to the simplification bit when we get there. Okay. Similarly, we have, you can do this with any fraction. 4 and, let's take our 4 and 2/8 here. Plus 3 and 4/8, right? Start with your fractions. 2/8 plus 4/8 is 6/8, and then 4 plus 3 is 7. Okay. Spoiler alert, all of these fractions can be simplified, but again, we're not worrying about that yet. Okay. Now, just like with adding whole numbers. If you need to make a new group, right? We have 9 plus 7. You've got to make a group of 10s, right? With those 6 left over. You can do that with fractions as well, except it's not always going to be 10s, right? We're going to be looking at our denominator and thinking about how many of those pieces equal to a whole 1, right? So if we had something like 2 and 4/5 plus 2 and 3/5. Okay. We want to think about, well, 4/5 plus 3/5. Let's start there. 4 plus 3 is 7/5. And then 2 plus 2 is 4. What we're going to do here, because our numerator is greater than our denominator, that means we've got a whole number in there. That's what's called an improper fraction. Okay, when the numerator is greater than the denominator, meaning you've got more pieces than fit into one whole, you've got what's called an improper fraction. And we're going to take that and we're going to make that a mixed number. So how many fifths make 1? Right? Numerator, denominator, the same value equals 1. So 5/5 equals 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to regroup those 5/5 into one whole and add it to our whole 4. So I'm going to take our 7/5. We're going to say, well, let's take our 5/5 out of it. So 7/5 minus 5/5. 7 minus 5 is 2. So we're going to have 2/5 left over. And then we're going to add our one whole that we just regrouped to our 4. So we're going to end up with 5 and 2/5 as our final answer. Okay. If the sort of regrouping and making a mixed number is tricky, you can check back into older lessons. We did that a couple weeks ago. Okay. Let's try one more just for good measure. Let's go with 10 and 7/8 plus 3 and 5/8. Okay. So looking at our fraction, 7/8 plus 5/8 is 12/8. Not 12/16, 12/8. Denominator stays the same. 10 plus 3 is 13. Okay, we've got an improper fraction. So let's make that improper fraction into a mixed number and regroup. How many eighths makes 1? 8/8 makes 1. So 12, take your 12/8 minus 8, not minus 8, but take 8 and regroup it into a whole number. How many do you have left? 12 minus 8 is 4/8. And we're going to take that 1 and add it to our 13. So we end up with 14 and 4/8. Make sense? Let's go over subtraction. Subtraction, similar. I'm going to change my color here. You can label it. Okay. Subtraction, similar, right? Let's take something like 3 and 3/4 minus 1 and 1/4. Okay. Start with our fraction. 3/4 minus 1/4. Okay. If I have 3 of something minus 1 of something, we have 2/4 left. Okay. 3 minus 1. And then, well, look at that. 3 minus 1 is our 2 and 2/4. Okay. We can see that on the number line too, starting at 3 and 3/4. And then we're going to minus 1. And then we're going to minus 1/4. Lo and behold, we actually end up at the exact same spot. 2 and 2/4 right there. Or 2.5. But again, I'm not super worried about simplifying fractions today. Okay. Similarly, 11 and 5/9 minus 3 and 2/9. Okay. Start with your fraction. 5/9 minus 2/9. They're the same size piece, so we can just subtract straight away. 5 minus 2 is 3, and the size of our piece is still 9ths. That hasn't changed. Okay, and then 11 minus 3, 11, 10, 9, 8, 8, and 3/9. Okay, where subtracting fractions might get tricky is when you have to regroup, just like with addition, but the concept is still the same. Okay, let's say we had something like 5 1/4 minus 3/4. We won't even go with a mixed number yet. 5 1/4 minus 3/4. Now, if I have 1/4, I'm going to draw my 1/4 over here. Here's my 1 bar, cut into fourths, and there's my 1/4. I can't take 3/4 away yet. I don't have enough fourths. What in heaven's name am I going to do? There's a bunch of fourths in here. I think we're back. Hello. I hope we're back. Certainly. If we're not back, I'm going to cry real tears. But that looked to be just a blip rather than the thing that just doesn't get back on at all. So we're going to keep pressing on. I will edit this in post. We have our 1/4. We can't take away 3/4 yet. We've got our 5 here. What we're going to do, just like with decomposing a group of 10s into 10 ones, we can decompose one of our 1s into 4/4. Yeah? Because watch what we do here. I'm going to take 1 away. 5 minus 1 is 4. And then we're going to take our 1/4 and we're going to add it to how many fourths equals 1? 4/4. So 1/4 plus 4/4 equals 5/4. Okay. 4 and 5/4, an equivalent value to 5 and 1/4. All we did is take one of our whole ones and decompose it into fourths to make an improper fraction. Okay, now we can do 5/4 minus 3/4. 5 minus 3 is 2. The size of the piece is fourths. And then 4 minus, we don't have any additional whole number here, so it's 4 and 2/4, right? We could even see that up on the number line. We started at 5 1/4. Okay, and we're going to subtract. We're going to go to the left 3/4, right? 1, 2, 3. And we end up just about 4 1/2 or 4 2/4. Yeah? Okay. Maybe the trickiest one of all, when we have 2 mixed numbers and we need to decompose. It's doable. Okay. Let's go with 6 3/8 minus 2 7/8. Now, again, we can't take our 3/8 and subtract 7/8 from it straight away. We've got to decompose one of our whole numbers, one of our whole bars. Okay, if I were to draw this out visually, it might look like this. With each one of these equaling 1. Okay, here's our 6 3/8 down here. Okay, I can't subtract 7/8 straight away, so what I got to do, I got to decompose one of these whole bars into eighths. So I'm going to do that. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now what I have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then let's count the number of eighths that I have. So I took all I did was take one of my whole numbers and decompose it into 8 eighths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And look at that. 3 plus 8 is 11, and the size of my piece is still eighths. Okay. Now I can subtract 11 eighths minus 7 eighths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I can subtract 5 minus 2. 1, 2. Okay, what I'm left with, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4 eighths. Just the same as going 11 eighths minus 7 eighths is 4 eighths, because 11 minus 7 is 4, and the size of the piece is eighth. And then 5 minus 2 is 3. Okay, so another way of showing it visually there. Yeah? So today's exit ticket is going to be about 6 practice problems on this, and any strategy works. If you want to just add or subtract straight across like this, if you want to draw a number line and think about using some jumps, right? Adding, our jumps go to the right, they get greater. Subtracting, our jumps go to the left, there's less value, right? Or if you want to draw it out like I did, draw out, for 2 and 4 fifths. We could draw, let me draw a quick, right? There's our 2 and 4 fifths, and here's our 2, and 3 fifths. Right? And we can see here in this tiny little drawing, all right, we've got 4, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fifths. But couldn't we just take one of these fifths over here and make another whole number? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's 2 fifths. Right? So any strategy works as long as you can justify it and prove it. All right. Thank you for joining in. I certainly hope the end of that video worked after that little glitch in the middle. If it didn't, I will cry some tears and try the end again. Thank you for joining. Starting our new read aloud at 1:15 today, so join in for that. Also, Instagram Live at 12, where we will continue our look at punctuation. Thanks for joining, everybody. We will see you next time.